A popular podcast. Where are we? Over here?
Over here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Same question, Glenn.
Popular podcast examining the unique friendship between two Hollywood icons, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas.
KTLA's Megan Tellis joins us with a special guest, fellow Trojan. Fight on. I love it.
Fight on. Matt Schrader, fight on. I'm sorry, Glenn. You're in between. Sorry, Kirk. You're with all these Trojans.
Yeah,
Yes.
I got two stepsons who went there. My brother-in-law went there.
Can't escape us.
And his family name's all over the campus.
So you got money, honey. Okay.
Well,
I gotta
no,
get it. He's got money. Okay, guess what? Matt Schrader created this fascinating podcast about the friendship between the two he was just talking about that reinvented the movies. Good morning, everyone. This is where I ad-lib questions. Okay, here we go. Matthew Schrader, this is exciting. You and your voice have been inside of my ear and in my head for the past, I'd say,
I'm
couple
getting that
of
a
days.
lot now.
Yeah,
since
it's
this
really
came out.
soothing. You
Thank you.
narrate the entire 2.5 feature film, basically, in podcast form, calling it a biopod. It's been called a couple of times.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about where this motivation came from. You went to SC, you were a producer in local news, and here you are.
Yeah, it came from a journalism background, so we were talking about kind of the origins of this amazing creative relationship. It's really maybe the biggest entertainment relationship that has maybe ever existed, and definitely in our lifetimes.
Right.
And you have this cross-section of two just visionary, these innovators, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and the ideas and the kind of the start of what will be decades of entertainment that all happens in this small window, this 4-year, 5-year window in the 1970s. And it's before they ever hit their big moment with Jaws and Star Wars, and the world starts to change, the idea of the blockbuster.
Right.
And that's what we wanted to try to do as a biopic, and really focus on their stories and beyond that, their friendship, because they relied on each other for support during this crucial time.
At some point, you call it an unlikely friendship. And I think that's because here we are in 2019. We see how major those films have been to pop culture history.
Sure.
You talked about Jaws, talk about American Graffiti with George Lucas and Modesto back in his prime.
Yep.
And then here they are now with the whole new Disneyland world coming out with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. For you, when did you realize that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg had that friendship? Was it during your time producing Score, which was a documentary, by the way? That you
I directed a film called Score, a film music documentary a couple years ago. It was about film composers, and one of the things we focused on a lot was the John Williams story, and him working with Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and building this kind of this interesting new relationship between a film storyteller and a musical storyteller. And when you think of what John Williams has done for the world of film, there's a very unique sound that now seems like it's everywhere. Everything's musical, everything has these themes and these big ideas.
He did the soundtrack for these movies.
Yeah, he saved Steven Spielberg has said he saved Jaws, and George has said if it weren't for the music in Star Wars, it would be a very different film, wouldn't it? I mean, that's one of the first things we remember. So it's the start of all of these entertainment things that are all wrapped up into one, and it all kind of happens in that period of time. And we wanted to be able to literally, go back and have people feel like they're sitting in the room with Steven and George, who are just artists. They're just creative people who are sitting in the room talking about these ideas. What if we did this kind of thing? What if the next movie we did this kind of thing?
Bouncing ideas off each other.
Exactly.
Like, hey, Steven, will you listen to this? Or Steve, I like how he calls him
what'd you
Steve.
think of my script? Like that kind of
exactly.
stuff.
What do you think? He printed out pictures. We actually have a clip from the podcast that we're just going to listen to, but understand, too, that there are actors who play Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, voice actors, correct?
We've recreated this whole thing, so we have actors that are playing each character, and sound design and music as well.
And then he narrates it. It's so special. Take a listen.
Oh, check this out. I got a letter from NASA.
NASA?
They think the film is likely to cause a panic. I guess with people seeing UFOs.
They wrote all that?
Yeah, 20 pages of it. It's pretty boring, actually. I was hoping they'd tell me I had the aliens all wrong.
Both George and Steven had more faith in each other than in themselves.
Here, I'll tell you what, George. I'll trade points with you. 2.5%.
So I'll give you 2.5% of Star Wars for 2.5% of Close Encounters?
Yep, I'll gamble with that.
Okay, let's do it.
They seal it with a handshake that neither of them had any idea would be worth over $40 million.
Well, we'll see what happens then.
Glenn, I need
You
you
were
to
a
pull out.
producer? I can hear you now. I'm dropping page E9.
Yeah.
We are floating.
Funny thing, when you
That clip
mentioned
is a little bit long.
when you talked about
little bit.
music, and as soon as you say Star Wars, dun 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 dun, Jaws,
Yep.
dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah.
And it
Well,
details
iconic
it. The
moments.
podcast
Yep. Yeah.
details those moments that
Yes.
those music notes were coming together in the way that George and Steve.
And
Look, I
what
feel
we
like I
just
know
heard,
them now.
that little clip right there
Yeah.
was this moment where both filmmakers thought they had royally screwed up their careers. This was over. They had messed up the projects that they're working on. They both said, no, you got the better project.
Right.
And they make this 2.5% trade, which wouldn't we all kill for 2.5% of
Yes.
Star Wars?
Yes.
now?
Oh
This is
my
my
God.
God.
But such a cool moment.
And George Lucas actually suffered, spoiler alert if you don't want to hear this, but he suffered what we thought was a heart attack in the podcast, ended up just being an anxiety attack when making Star
Right.
Wars.
Yeah, he
But it's
rushed himself to
fascinating.
the hospital because he was supposed to have 300 something shots done,
360,
special
I
effect
think,
shots
yeah.
for Star Wars, and he had 3. And he, this is
he had a
in the final
deadline.
days of Star Wars, or it seemed like it at least at the time, a few months away, and just a devastating thing. So it's the biggest flop turn triumph.
And same thing
in
with
history.
Jaws. Steven Spielberg was documenting all of it. The machine wasn't working, the sharks weren't working,
Right.
nothing was working. And this was in Martha's Vineyard over on the East Coast, and it was like nothing was working out.
Right.
But look at it now.
And his career he thought was over. And if not for this kind of relationship that he had with his friends, including Martin Scorsese too, but
Marty,
things start to, they drive around and look at the lines in New York City, when Jaws comes out. It's this kind of special moment of a filmmaker's first big hit.
And Matt, I have to ask you a question because Score, I saw it when it was in the Sherman Oaks Theater. So powerful. My friend Kenny Holmes and you work together, who I love. Where can people see that now, too? Because that really shows the power of music in film.
It's on Hulu now.
Okay.
Score is, and I think it's also, well, I know it's on Hulu.
Okay, great.
And
Go to
iTunes and all of that.
Hulu.
O-R-E, exactly. And then where can people find everything? including
GetBlockbuster.com
Okay.
is the website. If you have an Apple device, then it's on Apple Podcast. If you use Spotify, it's on Spotify. It's on all of those things. But the easiest way that we've done it is just getBlockbuster.com. All the links are right there.
And no
it's free.
commercials. It's free and no commercials,
Yes.
which took a lot of money.
Yes. So if you feel like throwing us a few bones in the process, totally up to you, but we would appreciate it.
All right.
So cool.
Thank you.
By the way,
Amazing.
Luke is a SC grad, Spielberg SC dropout.
It all worked out.
Pointed it out.
Continue the USC
Yeah, I'll
trend.
say.
Right.
Yeah.
Full circle, right here.
And I also crowdfunded Score. I was a little.
That's great.
It was
No
one
way.
of the
We're all
very
connected.
minor.
Well, thank you very much.
Hey, it was well worth
Look what it
was
created.
awesome.
How
yeah,
did you get
yeah.
connected with that?
Our good friend that we all have in common.
We do?
Too. Yeah.
Wow.
Which one? Who?
Yeah.
No, the same one that you
Oh,
did, Kenny Holmes.
Kenny.
Yeah.
Oh, Kenny needs to come out here.
After I heard they were doing it, I begged to see if I could participate. So yeah, it was a great
I
film.
was left out of this, by the way.
Yeah.
It's
Or Glenn.
great to see you too, Glenn.
Yeah.
So yeah, switching gears, the weather. We're talking about warmer weather.